Have you ever found yourself in a place of wonder when it comes to big questions about faith? We'll dive into this with Jackie Burns, author of The Wondering Place, starting now. Well, I'm here today with Jackie Burns, and I'm so excited to talk to you today because just a few months ago, a great new book came to my attention. It's called The Wondering Place, and Jackie is the author of this book, and you're a Chapel Hill mom.
I am.
And so excited to have you with me this morning to talk about your family and also, most importantly, the book right now.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and talk with you.
Thank you. Well, let's get started and share a bit about your family and how you came to Chapel Hill, and we'll get into the book after that.
Yeah. So, as you said, I'm a Chapel Hill mom. I have two daughters here that are twins in third grade. And it was kind of a bumpy road for us trying to find a school. It took several years for us and different schools to kind of find our home and something that I felt safe and comfortable sending my kids to every day. And this is the first year we've been here, and it's been just a great experience. And we're so happy to be here. And then I also have a husband named Taylor and just the two kids, and that's it. So
wonderful. And so just a few months ago, I was doing my normal walk down the elementary hallway, and Mrs. Olson, a third grade teacher, shared this book with me and said, "Did you know that one of our parents wrote this great book?" And I was like, okay, just the cover draws my attention, if nothing else. So I was like, oh, that's really pretty. But it's called The Wondering Place. And Mrs. Olson said, it is the coolest book because it is filled with questions that all kinds of people are always asking about faith. And so let's get into a little bit, just as an overview. This book has pretty much every question that a believer, a young person, a non-believer probably asks about Christianity. And what I like about it is the answers are given in such a way that is for any age level. I mean, any age level. And so what was it that really inspired you to write this book? And we'll get into some of the specific questions that you cover in your book in a minute.
Yeah. So one of my daughters a few years back, when she was 5 or 6, was really struggling with doubt about God. And when I would tuck her in at night, she would ask me these really deep theological questions like, how do we know Christianity is the true religion and people aren't just trying to trick us into believing things? Why do we have to suffer for something Adam and Eve did? And those were big questions to hear coming out of her mouth.
Yeah. I love that she's asking those questions.
I know,
She's really processing.
Yeah. Some of the questions I could answer, some I couldn't figure out how to explain in a child-friendly way, and some I didn't know the answers to. And because she had been struggling, I really needed to figure out answers to these questions to help her grow on her journey and have more confidence in God. So I started studying really deeply, writing out all these thorough answers in a way that I could present to her. And I thought, well, if I'm putting all these chapters together for her, why not write a book so that other people and other families who are also struggling with this can learn and use this as a reference. And a little backstory on myself as well. So I grew up in the church. I started going as a baby through adulthood, went to all the kids' activities, all the youth activities, 3 times a week, twice on Sundays, Wednesday nights. When I reached adulthood, I ended up straying from the Lord. And I feel like one of the reasons I did that is because I wasn't taught evidence for why we believe what we believe. And I never heard the word apologetics, never heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, nothing like that. And I was living just on blind belief. And I feel like if I would have had that foundation of faith, I wouldn't have strayed so far. And my house was built upon the sand at the time. It was not built upon the rock. So just because kids are in a Christian environment doesn't mean that they're solid in their faith. And I didn't want my daughter to have to go through the things that I did living apart from the Lord for so long. So
that is so important to when we teach kids, when we're sharing with them, to give them that evidence, not just the belief that we have, because then it doesn't mean as much. And so those are some things that we work on in our students as well. With some of our seminars, to have an opinion on something, you have to have a reason why and that evidence. So for sure, in your faith with Jesus, your understanding of the Lord, having more detailed information to help build your confidence in your faith and understanding who God is. So this is wonderful. How did you decide on the specific questions that you included in the book? Because there are so many, and they're all excellent. They're all like, oh, that's a perfect question.
Yeah.
That's a question that a lot of kids ask.
Yeah. So before I even had the idea of the book in my mind, a lot of the questions came from the things my daughters were asking, just genuine questions that they were interested in.
Did you just brainstorm a bunch of questions, like just start laying them out on paper, like as much as you could think of? Or?
I did.
Yeah.
And then some of the questions also came from my husband.
Oh,
He has struggled with a few questions that he had unanswered
Yeah.
for God and was struggling with those. He had a brother who died as a baby, and he was born sick and died a few months after birth. He also has his great-grandparents were helping some people on the side of the road and were hit by an oncoming semi and died. And that's something that he's just never been able to get over and has really struggled with. And so I wanted to bring some of that evidence and why God allows things like that to happen, because people can really struggle with that.
Yeah.
Other questions were just my own questions that I wanted to know the answers to that I didn't know yet.
Yeah.
And things that I think would have been helpful for me as a child to know and stay strong in my faith. More of like is there archaeological evidence for the Bible? How do we know God exists? Questions like that I think would have been really nice to know as a child.
Really nice to know, for sure.
Yeah.
I like to watch some of these street evangelists that go to
Yes.
colleges.
Yeah.
Stuart Conneckley is one of them. And some of the reasons why people reject faith is because they can't understand why a good God would allow bad things.
Yes, absolutely.
And so this book covers that in a way that's really clear and understandable. And I know as a mom, when my kids would ask me questions, I'd think, okay, where is that part in the Bible? Like, I got to go find that. And so this is a great reference to your point that you can go right to the book and find that question and give biblical answers. So I'm just going to read some of the questions that you pose in your book, and they're so great. I'll just do a couple of them. There's a whole section about why some of these things happen, why God allows it. So why does God allow suffering? That's a great question that I hear oftentimes with non-believers, wondering how God can allow things to happen.
Absolutely.
Why do bad things happen to good people? So his grandparents that were killed, I mean, why they were helping and that tragedy occurred. And so another one here, I've got these marked, is why are some babies born sick or with disabilities? And then one more I'll just go for now here is, why does life seem unfair? That's another broad question. It always looks like someone else has it easier, and why me? And that's unfair. And is God not with me, or does God not love me? And what I like about the book is, again, the way it's presented in a very clear way for any age level. And then there's discussion questions or think about it questions. And it just really provides that solid biblical answer to these very important and profound questions. And so one question I have for you is, how did you gather the information? I know you did say that you did some study and research, but did you have other people that helped contribute to some of your responses, maybe to questions that you were wondering about?
Yeah, so the original manuscript was done from my own study, research, and my personal walk with the Lord and experiences throughout my life. I am blessed to have a cousin with a theology degree who is a senior pastor at a church up north. So he looked through everything and helped me kind of work out some things that needed more clarity or correction. And then I also gave some of the content to my pastor and another pastor. So it was kind of cross-denominational review of content, because there can be faithful Christians that have different interpretations about things in the Bible. And I wanted to get multiple viewpoints from people And if there were ever any discrepancies, I would go straight to a deep study in the Word and deep prayer and just ask God for clarity to really show me what He wanted this book to say and present to people.
What a great process that you
Yeah.
went through. I think that's wonderful and good to know. And I know that you have acknowledgments in your book as well. Something that I think we all want to teach our kids and one another as believers is how do we share Jesus with others? And your chapter, I think it's chapter 22, how do I tell my friends about Jesus, is another one. So it's even more than just some of those crucial questions of why does God allow pain and suffering, but it's also how do I grow in my faith to be able to share Jesus with other people?
Because we're called to make disciples,
Yes,
not just to
exactly.
teach.
So the questions that you provide are widespread kinds of questions in different categories that I think are really helpful. And one question again here is it okay to have doubts about God? Again, we shouldn't be ashamed of having doubts because we're human. And how do we go to scripture? How do we learn about those doubts and get past that and find ourselves in a deeper place of faith and believing? And so your book goes through all of that. What are some stories or impacts that you have heard from people that have read your book? Have you heard any feedback?
It's still kind of fresh, but I have heard some things. There was a mom who told me that her son wasn't really into reading at all. And this is the first book that he ever asked her to buy for her because he was excited to read it. I've had kids as young as 4 start reading this with their parents by their side.
Yeah.
I have people in their 70s and 80s that are reading this book and are growing closer to God and learning things and forming new faith foundations at that age in life. And it's just beautiful to see such a widespread impact of that. One other thing that I just love is how God works in just the craziest, cool ways sometimes. And I have a few friends who are atheist, and they would never be caught dead with a Bible in their house. But they bought this book to support me. And now this book is sitting in their homes with their families and kids, hopefully reading it.
Yes.
But just waiting to see kind of how God uses this to work in their hearts and in their lives. I've told myself from the beginning of this process that if this book brings one person to Jesus, it was all worth it. And I just can't wait to get to heaven and see the impact that how God has used this book to reach people.
That's awesome. It's wonderful. And how about you personally? Going through a process like this has to be even more transformative in your own walk with the Lord than what you maybe even anticipated it was at the beginning.
Oh yeah, it was. My faith has exploded since I started this project. I was kind of a lukewarm Christian at the beginning, and now I'm just on fire for God. When I started writing this, I was working full time for a secular corporation and had been there for quite some time. And I knew that there was no way I was going to finish this book if I was working for someone else. And God made it very clear to me that I needed to quit my job.
Wow.
And work on this full time. And without any plan, I just from His word. And needless to say, my kids and husband thought I was absolutely insane, not having anything to go off of except for His leading. And I don't regret it for a second. It's something really cool that my kids have been able to witness and grow in their faith from that experience because they've seen me just unwavering following the Lord's leading. And that's not something they can learn from the pages of the book. So it's something that they need to witness. And it's been really nice.
Beautiful. How long did it take you to write the book?
The whole process was about 1.5 years.
Okay. That's quick, actually.
It was, but when I was working full time at my other company, I would go to the library at nights after work and work on this.
Wow.
And then I quit as soon as I could and just poured all my effort and time into this book.
So share with us, how do you see this book being used in a family? What are some suggestions you have? How does it work well? I mean, I'm sure you've been reading it with your girls. You've heard stories about how families are using it. What are some suggestions?
Yeah, so it's written in such an easy to understand way. Even kids that don't have any biblical knowledge at all can understand it. There is an extensive glossary in the back that covers all the biblical terminology that people might not know about. And you don't have to read it start to finish. You can pick one chapter at a time, whatever's interesting to you. And kids can kind of bounce around, read a little bit at a time or a lot at a time, independently or with parents.
Yeah.
It's a really great book to interact with your children with because of the talk about it questions, and it can kind of bring up different conversations and topics that can help kids explore their faith and dive deeper into faith in their relationship with God.
Great bedtime conversations or dinner table conversations as a family, or devotions as a family. Another great part of this is just the layout. You start with the foundation. Really, who is God? Is he real?
Yes.
And the first part is the good news about Jesus, and then you go into, is God real? And just starting from the very foundation and leading into some of those deeper questions later on. I'll say that I shared this book after I read it. I was so excited about it. And I just thought this is something that any teacher would need to have, because these questions come up all the time in our classrooms. And all of our teachers are believers and they're in the Word and all of that. But having a specific place to go is so helpful. And so I shared this book at one of our staff meetings, and the teacher's eyes lit up. And so I'll tell you that we have purchased a book for every teacher and staff person in the building. And so we're just excited to support you and what God is doing through you, through your writing and through your research and study and through your faith. And I think it's a great example of feeling the calling, and that pressing on your heart that the Lord's leading you to do something, and being obedient to that and serving him and sacrificing. You've quit your job and you've poured into this. And now you're seeing the fruit of people coming to the Lord, being able to witness to atheists. Any age level can get so much out of this book to increase and deepen their faith in the Lord.
Well, I thank you so much for your support on those books for your teachers. That just means so much to me personally. And I know that they're going to be used to really deepen faith in the students here.
Yeah. As we close, is there any last bit of encouragement to parents, families who are raising kids today, and just through your experiences and your writing, what you could say to encourage families?
Yeah. I would say that teach your children evidence. Don't just teach them what they need to believe. Teach them why they can trust what you're teaching them. Any different apologetics resource can be great for that. Obviously, they need to know the faith foundations as well. This school clearly has that covered in all aspects. But you can always disciple your children at home, especially if they're not going to a Christian school. Teach them the foundations and teach them the evidence, apologetics, and why they can trust what they believe.
That's wonderful. And it starts at home.
It does.
Parents are the first teachers, the number one teachers for their children. And we believe that and know that, and great advice. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited about this book that you've written. And may I ask, who's the illustrator? It's so beautiful.
Oh, she is great. Her name is Lindsay Wilson, and she lives in England. And she is just a phenomenal illustrator. And I feel so blessed to have found her.
Yeah,
so
wonderful. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm so thankful to Jackie Burns for being with me today and hearing more about her book, The Wandering Place. Remember, if you'd like to get your own copy, you can click the link below, find out where you can purchase it, maybe for yourself or a gift. It's a great resource. Well, next week we are off. It is our last week of school, and we are saying goodbye to our students, so we will not be producing a podcast next week, but we will continue this summer with some great guests and some fun conversations. Remember to like and subscribe this podcast. We really appreciate reaching more people for Jesus and having you with us. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.